So first thing we're going to go over is Joe Biden putting kids in cages. So the biggest thing about what's going on with this is that 3 years ago, putting kids in cages was somehow wrong. So basically what had happened is a few years back, there was some news articles about how Trump was putting kids in cages, which we found out later. The pictures that we had were not from 2017 or 2018 or even 2019. They were from 2014 during the Obama administration when Joe Biden was the vice president. And just like Trump said in the debate with Joe Biden, who built the cages, Joe? Who built the cages? Who built the cages? I want to know, Joe, who built the cages? So that's my awful Donald Trump impression, and I might do that again sometime down the road. But the reality is Obama and Biden built the cages. Well, now, but Trump got all the blame for it because Trump had kind of exacerbated the problem by making sure to separate children from people they said were parents, just in case they weren't actually parents. It's a big deal. A lot of these kids are being trafficked across the border to become, either slave workers or sex slaves for, unfortunately, some perverted Americans and maybe even perverted Canadians. So it's very important to make sure that if we are arresting illegal immigrants coming across the border, that if they have kids with them, we obviously want to treat them humanely. They're still human beings. They're trying to find a better life, but they are violating laws coming across the border, and they, unfortunately, are putting their kids in jeopardy by doing this as well. However, I get it. America's the best country in the world. You want to come here and, for Americans, most of us, when we think of Mexico, we think of, Cancun. We think of Puerto Vallarta, Cabo, Mazatlan, all the tourist places. Most of the country in Mexico is not like that, though. So you have to remember, this is, especially in northern Mexico, there's, where cartels tend to run a lot of the show. You have to realize that these people are fleeing for a better life. However, we can't take in everybody. So the best thing to do as Americans, is we can use our compassion, our dollars, our resources to help people in their own countries. I've actually heard some people actually make the case that we should coordinate with Mexico for kind of basically we should invade Mexico is what I've heard from people. Not to actually topple their government, but to actually topple the drug lords, to make sure all the cartels are kind of wiped out, because they are a bigger threat, and they do tend to be the reason why so many people are fleeing. So if we can take care of that problem, but there are other ways to go about that. Obviously, I'm not recommending we invade Mexico, but that is something that's been discussed. So all of a sudden now, when Trump was doing this, and now remember, Obama was doing this before, and now Trump is doing this, he's separating these kids, and yes, it's a government agency trying to all of a sudden manage, family matters for immigrants, and, there's a language barrier, there's all sorts of problems. Yes, there are going to be problems that happen. You may, the parents might leave and not come get their kids. You might separate the kids at one place and then put the parents somewhere else, and then it's a struggle trying to get them put back together as a family. So I get the problems with that, but leave it up to the news media to make sure that their bias comes through loud and clear. When Trump was putting kids in cages, basically he was putting them in areas, in locations so that they can be properly vetted, and we make sure that they're not being sex trafficked. We can make sure they're not with a sex trafficker. We can make sure that if they're here with family, okay, fine. We're going to put you guys together. If you are seeking asylum, then there's a whole process for that as well. And we're going to try to, make this work. That's the scenario where we're trying to do. But that was putting kids in cages when it was Trump as president. Now that it's Biden in office, you can see the Washington Post Obviously, I think it's the biggest piece of gutter trash news outlet on in the country. It's probably the worst. CNN on TV is probably the worst. The Washington Post is the worst in general, period. They're just awful. Their bias is unlimited, and it's evidenced by the fact that there's an article where that recently came out. The Washington Post reached out to Tesla for the company Tesla for some comments on a story, and Elon Musk just replied back to them, "Give my regards to your puppet master." So you can tell that the Washington Post is just garbage. So going back now, the Kids in Cages has changed. Kids in Cages is now Migrant facility for children. So Biden just opened up the first migrant facility for children opens up under Biden. That's the headline in the Washington Post. So it's no longer, we are basically treating these children horribly because of the color of their skin and because of what country they come from and blah blah blah. No, now it's we're putting these kids in these facilities so that they can be housed while they're being processed. What the hell is that? The reality is that if you want to be consistent on this, then Biden is putting kids in cages. However, I'm being consistent because I never said Donald Trump was putting kids in cages. I never said Barack Obama was putting kids in cages, and I'm not saying Joe Biden is putting kids in cages. What I am saying is that the double standard is just so outrageously obvious. It's ridiculous how bad it is. And there's opinion pieces basically saying, "Oh yeah, this is not a problem. It's not a big deal. This is different. Biden doing it's different." No, it's not different. This has nothing to do with race. This has nothing to do with anything. This is about enforcing border laws, and enforcing all of this stuff, making sure that these families are safe, and make sure especially the kids are safe before they either are deported back or their asylum petition gets reviewed and we see if we take them in for claiming asylum. There is just the level of indecency in our media is terrible, and this is just another reason when people were saying, "Oh, Trump is awful because he was saying that the press is the enemy of the people." This is an example of the press being an enemy of the people. So CNN, Washington Post especially, those two are probably the worst as far as being enemy of the people, because not only do they lie, not only do they make things up, not only that, but it's not just that. I think a lot of media right now is being sensationalized because they're trying to get ratings rather than tell the truth. So I get it a little bit, but it's blatantly obvious how different they treat one political party over the other. And this is the prime example today of that. How under Joe Biden, they're not putting kids in cages, even though there are bars on these facilities. They're putting kids in migrant facilities for children. But under Donald Trump, all the evidence they had for kids in cages, at least visual evidence, was from the Obama administration. They used that against Trump. And then every time Trump tried to say, "Look, I'm trying to do this right. If you will allocate the resources, the funding for border security," part of that funding that Trump was requesting was supposed to go to better facilities, to build better facilities for these migrant children. And if you'll remember, Democrats would not give him that money because part of that money for border security was going to go to a wall. So they decided that they didn't really care about the children in cages anymore because they hated the wall and they didn't want Trump to have a win. So they obviously didn't care enough about the kids in cages at that time, and basically they don't care about them now because now they're back in what they called cages. So it's absolute bullshit. The reality is that these children do need to be separated for a short time from the people that bring them to make sure they are not being abused in any way. We cannot, as a society, not only can we not allow people to come in illegally, that's just not something we can do. However, even if we were giving immediate citizenship to any asylum seeker, anyone who said, I want an asylum, even if we were saying, you're a citizen now, even if we were doing that, we still need to make sure these children are not with, number one, an abusive mom or dad, or both. Make sure that they are not actually have, slave traders essentially bringing them across the border into our country and then selling them out once they're here. Also, if we happen to catch someone like that, we want to make sure that we're not only are we not allowing them to come in the country together, we don't want that person who is running children across the border allowed not only in this country, but we probably don't want him to. We probably want to hold him and make sure he's never allowed to see the light of day ever again. So those are certain things that need to be done, and I appreciate how difficult that is. But it's just blatantly obvious. The media is showing its true colors. How under a Republican, these are kids in cages. Under a Democrat, they're just migrant facilities. It's despicable. And to highlight, remember, the Washington Post and CNN, they're the two garbage outlets that cannot be trusted at all.